Welcome back again, Power BI enthusiasts, to the Power App tutorial channel. We are continuing with our Power BI series with part 4 of our Power Up Challenge walkthrough for 2024. And in today's topic, we're going to be focusing on building our measures table, which is going to be our last table. Before we begin, if you're new here, you know what to do. Hit that subscription button, add that notification bell. And don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. But let's not waste time. Let's jump into the video. Okay, so we are in our model in our Power BI animal shelter demo, and we are going to create a measure. But what is a measure? In the context of Power BI, a measure is a calculated column. And I'm going to leave a link to the Power BI page for Microsoft Learn on measures in the description. But like I said, a measure is essentially a calculated column, but a calculated column for your Power BI. There are different ways of creating a measure, but usually when you create a measure, they come as this calculator icons on the side. But enough of explanations or descriptions. Let's just jump right in and start creating our measures. Now we're going to create our measure in a different way. We are going to actually create a table, like I've said before. You can create a measure on a table, just like you can create a calculated column on a table in the Dataverse. You can also create a measure on a table, but we're going to create our measures separately. So hit New Table, and we are going to rename this table MYMeasures. Awesome. And once you rename that, don't forget to hit Commit. And once you hit Commit, let's go to the table view. And from the table view, click on Measures. And as you can see, we have a table with an empty column, and this is how basically our measure is going to be situated. So the plan is to create all our measures inside our MyMeasures table. So to create a measure, just right click on it and click on New Measure. Now we can create as many measures as we want to create. I believe I created close to 20 measures when I was creating my original Power BI report, but we don't need to make as much as that. I have selected 10 lists of, I call them elite measures that we're going to use for this demo. And the first one is going to be total animals rescued. So let's just rename this total animals rescued. And total animals rescued is going to have this formula called count rows animal info. If you can remember, our table has unique set of microchip IDs. So all these dots is counts, since we have a unique set of microchip IDs, it counts the primary key, which is the microchip ID, and gives us the total animals that have been rescued by the animal shelter. So that's going to be our first calculated column or measure. All right, let's create our second measure. And just like before, you right click on my measure, click on new measure. And this new measure, I already went ahead to type it in. It's going to be called total animals fostered. And this is going to be the code for total animals fostered. And I'm going to leave all these codes in the description in the YouTube video, so you can copy and paste. And they also come with comments. But total animals fostered is going to use the calculate function to count the rows of animal info, and then it's going to filter it based on animal data foster field. So that's what it's going to use to filter it, and then give us the total animals that are fostered in the shelter. This is going to be our second measure. On to the third measure, and just like before, right click on my measures and click new measure. And this is going to be our third measure. It's going to be the total animals rescued last year. And this is the code for the measure. Like I said, I'm going to leave this code in the description. but it's going to use the calculate function. And one thing about measures is that you can use a measure you've already created. Since we already created a total animals rescued measure, we're using that to calculate our total animals rescued last year. So what it does is calculates using total animals rescued field, which you just created, but then it uses intelligence to use this sample period last year and goes to the dim date. Remember the dim date table we created and uses that date function. It's a very, very cool formula, but this is what we're going to use to calculate the total animals rescued last year. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the remaining 7 formulas, and we're just going to walk through each one of them. So you can pause and put in this code if you want to follow along. But like I said, I'm going to leave all this in the description. But I'll be back and then we'll continue. All right, welcome back. So these are going to be our 10 measures that we're going to use. I will continue from where we start. But if you're seeing these hidden icons on the right, it's because I hid the table. So you can hide a table if you click on the 3 ellipses, 3 dots. You can hide or unhide a table. So let me just unhide them all. It's just a cool feature because you know that measures, you can't really see them. As you can see on the left, all we see is an empty column. So you can hide your measures after you use them in your report. But these are going to be all our measures. Let's go down. The number 4 is total fostered last year. So total animals fostered last year. And this is going to be is similar to the total animals rescued last year. But this time we are using the total animals fostered measure, which we created. And then we're using the sample period last year also. The next one is the average days shelter to foster. So feel free to pause and type this in if you're following along. But like I said, but this code essentially has wonderful job of giving us the average days it takes for an animal to move from shelter to foster using the average days of foster field and the average days of arrival field. And then it gives us the date difference. And after everything has been converted to days, it finally converts everything into an integer. And this is going to be our 5th measure. If you have noticed, I'm not going in any particular order on the Power BI report. I'm going over a list I have. But number 6 is going to be change YOY. So change year on year animals rescued. So we want to calculate the change in, and we're going to use this, we're going to use all this in our reports. But this is a cool feature to calculate the total animals that are rescued year by year. And that's going to be number 6. Number 7 is going to be total animals ready for foster, which is right up top. And this just calculates the animals whose shelter status is saying ready for foster. Number 8 is a special header drill through. So the report drill through header is our number 8. And it's going to give us a header with the label drill through with a dash. And it's going to check if we are trying to get the value of the shelter name. If we're trying to get the value of the shelter name, it will give us that value, or else it will give us an empty string. And then it will also check if we're trying to get the month or the year and gives us that value. If it doesn't give us that value, it's going to give us a default value. But it's a cool header. So just type it in if you're following along or just copy and paste. Now, after all this, since I've already inputted this, I don't need to commit. So you guys should be committing your codes. But number 9 on our list is most fostered animal. And this is going to be our number 9, max fostered animal. And as you can see, the code has gotten more complex, which is why I have my own list on me. But essentially, I was going to make this code shorter, but I realized we might come into some edge cases. I actually came into some edge cases where I had types who had the same count, so the same max count. So I had to account for those edge cases. But essentially, the code starts with a variable called max count animal type, and it uses the max formula to basically filter the animal date of foster. The first time around, it filters it, calculates, and gives us the animal type. Then it uses count and max again to filter it. So it uses this count and max again to filter it again. And this time around, we come up with a count of animals info. And that is stored in a variable called animal type. So when that's stored in a variable called animal type, we go again into another filtering sequence where it filters animal info using data foster, and then it compares that variable that we returned and adds it to the animal info and gives us another count. Now, once that count is finally calculated, it now uses the same animal type and the variable we created in the first place to filter again, and then gives us the final animal type. So it's a long code, but like I said, we had a lot of edge cases that had to be accounted for, and that's why it had to be extra long. But it works. It works perfectly, and accounts for everything that you can think of, or I can think of. So this is what we're going to use for our most fostered animal. And for the number, don't forget to commit when you finish typing it in. And like I said, I'm going to post this in the description. But that's for the most fostered animal. And the last on our list is going to be most rescued animal, which is similar to the most fostered animal. It's the same code. But for this time, for this purpose, we are looking at animal date of arrival instead of date of foster. So it's the same long code, but we're looking at animal date of arrival. And with that, we have come to the end of all our measures. And if you want to see what your measures look like, you have to actually use it in a visual. So we're just going to go ahead and do that right now. So I am in my reports page, and to get here, just click on the reports view, and let's go to our test measures, the hidden page we created. And I'm gonna add in a matrix. So to add a matrix, just click on the matrix visual. Let's drag this and put this in the middle. And then I'm gonna open down our measures so we can start pulling in some data. But first, let's look at the shelter home. Since all these are all connected using relationships, all these tables are connected using relationship, we should be fine. So I'm just gonna grab the shelter name first. And I'm gonna go to animal info. Let's test the relationships. Let's see if it works. So go to animal info and let's look for shelter status. And click on the check mark right next to shelter status. Okay, it's going to columns. Drag it and put it under rows. So just click and drag and then drop it under the rows. Okay, that looks good. And then let's go and start adding our measures. So just hit the drop down so the animal info reduces a little. You can do the same thing for the shelter home. We don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to start picking some select columns. The first one we're going to pick is total animals rescued, and then total animals fostered, animals rescued last year, animals fostered last year, then average days shelter to foster. All right, let's see what this looks like. Just gonna drag this over here. It looks like our measures are working as expected. I'm gonna expand this. Give me a second. All right. It should be a little bit better. Let me zoom in a little. So I just decided to add some real estate space by pushing this and reducing the drop-down menu. Okay, so we have total animals rescued, total animal. Looks like our measures are working fine. And if this is the beauty of our using the matrix, if you click on the plus sign, it actually breaks it down. So as you can see, our relationships are working fine because we're using shelter name and we're also using the animal table, and it's still connecting and we're still getting our data. So you can see, so for based on adopted fields, they are reduced and the numbers are different. So this is going to be our test for measures, but we still have other measures to test. So it has a whole bunch of other measures. So we're going to use our card screen to do that. So let's just switch over to the card screen and just click on the card screen to switch over to the card screen. All right, so we're on the card screen. I'm going to extend this out so we can see our tables again. And just, okay. I'm going to extend the visuals too because I need some visuals. All right, we're going to grab a card. So this 1, 2, 3 thing is called a card. Just there are two different types, but I'm just going to grab the normal card. And let's reduce this a little. And we're going to drag our first total animals rescued, my measure, sum. I'm going to reduce this a little. Should be fine. All right, so we have 10 measures. So I'm going to duplicate this 9 more times. And to duplicate this is just Control C and Control V, just like before. And I'll be back once I'm done duplicating. Okay, we're back. And I decided to arrange them a little bit so we can see them better. And so we'll start with the second one. So just click on the second one, remove the check mark for total animals rescued, and let's click on total animals fostered so you can display that. And then click on the third one. Our number 3 is total animals rescued last year. So uncheck and then look for total animals rescued last year and check that in. And then we can extend this out so we can see the full words. And then for number 4, total fostered. So uncheck and then check total fostered last year. Feel free to extend it out. And then number 5, average days. So uncheck and check. I'm gonna do all of them and then I'll be back. Same way. All right, we are back and I took the privilege of arranging it so it could be more visually appealing. And we have all our 10 measures, all displaying and giving us our values. So now we have our test measures screen and we have our card screen. Now, for animals ready for foster, if you remember, there is no animal currently in our table whose shelter status says ready for foster, and that's why it's saying blank, and that's fine for now. But we're going to be using all these measures in our availables, animals reports, and our shelter review. And that's going to be in our next video. But thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.